Chapter 4231. So what if this was the Earth realm? They had already arrived at the Earth realm, and that was enough to prove that they already possessed the ability in the Earth realm. They would absolutely not become Qing Luo's burden. The youngsters' eyes seemed to be filled with the flames of war. The blood in their bodies kept on boiling. The actions of their hands and the profound waves released. It also became more and more ferocious. Ayo! The dragon's roar shook the heaven and earth. The huge dragon's body charged straight into the clouds as it spiraled in the sky, covering the entire sky completely. It was tight and fierce as it charged downwards. The huge dragon's head emitted an overbearing dragon's might. As it charged towards Bai Mei, it actually shocked Bai Mei so much that the dark yin flute in her hands almost fell out. The dragon's might landed, and accompanied by the young lady's clear voice, it reverberated through the sky. Bai Mei, you've spent so much effort to lure me here. Leaving in such a hurry, isn't it not good? Bai Mei clenched her teeth tightly as she raised the flute in her hands up high, blocking in front of her. The thick black fog formed a barrier, enveloping Bai Mei within it. The barrier and the dragon's might went against each other. In the sky, the young lady's fingers moved slightly as the glower flame fan was like a fairy scattering flowers, turning into a devilish sharp blade as it rained down towards Bai Mei. The dragon's might shook. The glower flame fan's profound waves pressed downwards. Bai Mei's hand, which was holding onto the flute, started to tremble, as though she couldn't hold on any longer. The thick black fog continued to spread in all directions. Oh no, if this carried on. She couldn't hold on any longer. She couldn't die. Bai Mei's breathing was hurried as she broke out in cold sweat. She injected all her energy into the dark yin flute. The dark yin flute, which had sucked human blood, coupled with Bai Mei's profound energy, caused the surroundings of the dark yin flute to tremble as the thick evil qi became even more intense. It almost swallowed Bai Mei entirely into the black fog. Protect Miss Bai. Among the secluded palace's disciples, a command rang. The secluded palace's disciples who were battling with the world group immediately swarmed over 10 people, blocking in front of Bai Mei. There were some who charged into the sky, totally disregarding the existence of the blue dragon to disturb Qing Luo. With the intervention of the secluded palace's disciples, Bai Mei finally had some breathing room. She raised her head to look at the high and mighty girl who seemed to be above the 9 heavens. Her bloodshot eyes were filled with deep resentment. Damn slut. Every single time in Qing Luo's hands she wasn't able to gain any advantage at all. He had clearly planned everything. But in the end they would always fail in various ways. Qing Luo, that slut, was fated to be with her by birth. Bai Mei clenched her fists so tightly that her fingers almost sank into the flute. One day she would definitely kill Qing Luo, torturing her bit by bit until she died without a burial ground. Bai Mei uttered these harsh words in her heart. While the Palace of Darkness disciple was still in front of him, he turned and ran. He had only taken 2 steps. Her peripheral vision caught a glimpse of the lady who was hiding in the corner, staring at Qing Luo with a face filled with terror. Bai Mei lowered her gaze and looked at the flute of dark yin in her hand. A glint flashed across his eyes. Then her body moved slightly and she quickly rushed to the corner. He reached out and pulled her up. Bai, Miss Bai. Third Elder's eyes were filled with joy as he raised his head. She was really willing to save him. You risked your life to send this flute of dark yin to me. If you want to leave, let's leave together. Bai Mei smiled at him. Cheer up, the secluded palace's disciples will protect us as we leave. This smile of hers made Third Elder's heart filled with emotions. Chapter 4232. After Bai Mei mentioned Third Elder, she turned her head and took a look at Qing Luo. She immediately raised the dark yin flute in her hands as a burst of dense evil qi burst forth. Looking at the huge black fog pouring into the bodies of the secluded palace's disciples. At the same time, it was like a huge wave that spread in all directions. Bai Mei then retracted her gaze. Let's go. Qing Luo originally wanted to chase up, but she was forced to take a few steps back by the surging black fog. Those secluded palace's disciples who were injected with the evil qi had their skin mercilessly sliced by the glower flame fan's wind blades as they were blocking in front of her, causing immense pain. And under the dragon's might, they were unable to move. At this moment, a shocking roar exploded from their mouths. Green veins popped out on their foreheads. The muscles on their arms tensed up bit by bit. Green veins could be seen all over their bodies. The entire person looked extremely terrifying. Not only that, their abilities had also skyrocketed in this instance. It could be said that these secluded palace's disciples were now puppets controlled by the dark yin flute. Being blocked by these crazy secluded palaces, disciples only took a few breaths' time. This had already given Bai Mei a chance to escape. Her fingertips swept. The glower flame fanned the secluded palace's disciples who were charging forward. Lowering her eyes, she looked at her hands which were stained with powder. She glanced sideways at the world group's brothers behind her and finally resisted the urge to chase after Bai Mei. What if it was another trap to lure the tiger away from the mountain? What if Bai Mei was forced into a corner and made use of the dark yin flute to torture the world group's brothers? What should they do? Forget it. She wasn't in a hurry to chase after them. Anyway, she had already scattered the soul-chasing powder on top of the dark yin flute. Within 3 days the soul-chasing powder would not dissipate. After settling these people and settling the world group's brothers, then following the soul-chasing powder to search for Bai Mei wasn't in a hurry. Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly as she squinted her bewitching eyes. Her lips curled into an eerie arc. Kill. Bai Mei brought third elder and escaped. But that didn't mean that she would let these people, who had disturbed her, off. The world group's brothers, in addition to Yiqing Luo and Blue Dragon's cooperation, the disciples of secluded Darkness Palace were quickly defeated. Especially now that Bai Mei was far away, the flute of Dark Yin's control over them gradually weakened. In the end, they didn't even have the slightest chance to resist. After a while, the edge of the cliff was littered with corpses. The faces of the young boys and girls were filled with killing intent after a bloody battle. All of them were gasping for air. His entire body was covered in blood. But there was not the slightest hint of fear on his face. After the battle ended, all of them raised their heads and looked at the girl in the sky with smiles on their faces. Looking at those familiar faces, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. Yiqing Luo's heart softened a little. The corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. With a leap, she jumped down from the back of the blue dragon. He was immediately surrounded by more than 10 people. Madame Qing Luo, we've won. We won. Reporting to Madame Qing Luo, for this mission, not a single one of them was left alive and there's not a single casualty on our side. Madame Qing Luo, the youths' faces were brimming with excited smiles as though they were begging for praise. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past everyone as she smiled and nodded her head. All of you are great and have improved greatly. He had obtained the girls' approval. The youngsters couldn't help but started cheering. The current atmosphere didn't look like it had just experienced a war. Chapter 42-33. Before that, she had personally seen Yiqing Luo's pale face. If it was according to Yiqing Luo's character, as early as when he saw them as hostages, hanging at the edge of the cliff, Yiqing Luo would make her move. But she sent Xianxia to save them. This made Yan Xiaoyi worried about Yiqing Luo's health. Yiqing Luo smiled as she placed her hand on Yan Xiaoyi's. Look at me, do I look like I have something on? Yan Xiaoyi pursed her lips. I just don't want you to put on a brave front in front of us. In order to be able to catch up to your footsteps, in order to be able to support you, we are all training very hard. So, no matter what happens to you, please try to rely on us. The smile in Yiqing Luo's eyes became even gentler, touched by their sincere feelings for her. She chuckled out gently and shook her head at them. I'm really fine now. It's all thanks to Ajan. Leader? Yan Xiaoyi stared blankly. Just now, in order to save the brothers, Captain fell down the cliff. It was Ziqing who rushed down to save Captain, but Ziqing was brought back by this blue dragon. But Captain, she bit her lower lip. No. Let's go to the bottom of the cliff and look for the leader. As she spoke, Yan Xiaoyi turned around and walked towards the cliff. Yiqing Luo immediately held her hand as she laughed lightly. Ajan is fine, don't worry. You know where the leader is? Yan Xiaoyi was startled and asked in surprise. Yiqing Luo pulled her along as she looked towards the blue dragon which was entrenched in the sky. The gigantic dragon circled around a few times. It slowly moved its dragon head towards Yiqing Luo's direction. The enormous dragon head and its azure eyes were extremely clear. Yan Xiaoyi stared at the dragon's head and met its eyes. Looking at Yiqing Luo smiling towards that blue dragon. Suddenly, a guess came to his mind. She was so shocked that her beautiful eyes widened bit by bit. Even his breathing quickened. The young lady's long and narrow eyes curved as she slowly extended her hand towards Lan Long. The voice of the girl rang out beside everyone's ears. Ajan, everyone's worried about you. Ajan? Madame Qing Luo was shouting out group leader's name towards that blue dragon? What was going on? Everyone in the world group was astonished. Immediately after, a scene that made them even more confused appeared in front of them. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the gigantic dragon was surrounded by a blue gust of wind. Dark radiance shot out in all directions as blue light enveloped the area. When the blue light dissipated, the blue dragon had already disappeared. It was replaced by a slender figure. His black hair fluttered in the wind. His azure blue eyes were filled with fatigue, and his brows were also filled with exhaustion. Leader. It was the guild leader. It was the guild leader. Everyone looked at Long Yunjian with their mouths agape. His heart suddenly beat extremely fast. They watched helplessly as the blue dragon became their regiment commander. Was this an illusion? Or, that blue dragon was their regiment commander? How could this be? That was a dragon. An incomparably noble dragon. How did he become a human? Even the azure dragon, one of the 4 sacred beasts, would not be able to transform into a human. Zhan. Yiqing Luo walked towards Long Yunjian as she supported the swaying young man. Long Yunjian shook his head at her as his vision lifted up towards the crowd, searching for someone's figure. Yiqing Luo supported Long Yunjian as they arrived in front of the world group. Everyone was still in a daze. Chapter 42-34. Yan Xiaoyi regained her senses as she stared at Long Yunjian and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. She was filled with questions and thousands of words. After meeting Long Yunjian's expression, she only said one sentence. Ziqing is fine, Lulu has given her a medicinal pill and she's resting over there. Saying that, she stiffly raised her hand and pointed to the other side. The direction which Yan Xiaoyi pointed at, the crowd immediately dispersed. Long Yunjian looked over. He saw Tong Ziqing, who was leaning on Biming Lulu's leg with her eyes shut. The blood on her body had already stopped flowing. Her face was no longer as pale as before. He heaved a sigh of relief and at the same time, he leaned weakly against Yiqing Luo. Qiao Jin and the other youngsters hurriedly went up and helped Yiqing Luo to support Long Yunjian. This was a reflexive action. After touching Long Yunjian, the few of them turned stiff. Their minds unconsciously surfaced. That huge blue dragon earlier. That blue dragon was their group leader. Their group leader was a dragon. The youngsters supported Long Yunjian as they were in a mess. Until Yan Xiaoyi spoke out and broke the deadlock. Cough. Qing Luo, you're saying, this group leader he is that blue dragon earlier? The youngsters immediately pricked up their ears. That pretended to be serious but obviously eavesdropping look made Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh out. Yes, your group leader is indeed that blue dragon earlier. It was one thing to understand in their hearts. Hearing Yiqing Luo admit it was another thing. Their eyes widened. Why? They and their group leader from devil class till now had not discovered that their group leader was a dragon? No matter what his identity is, he is still our group leader in the world group, isn't that so? Yiqing Luo smiled as she looked at everyone's shocked expressions. Yiqing Luo's words made everyone's shocked expression slowly recede. Their gazes turned towards Long Yunjian. The huge stone in their hearts was suddenly put down. Right. No matter what the group leader's identity was, they were all their group leaders. Just like, no matter what secret Qing Luo had, they were all their Madame Qing Luo. As long as his heart with them was sincere, that was enough. Alright, Zhan has just completed his transformation, and his body will be in a weak state for a period of time. I'll bring you to the place where I'm staying in the earth domain first. The youth's eyes lit up as if they had been injected with chicken blood. We can go to Madame Qing Luo's place in the earth domain now. I'm finally one step closer to Madame Qing Luo. Our efforts have paid off. Happy, excited, listening to their playful words. Yiqing Luo felt that she was in a dream. His heart was filled with warmth. It had been a long time since there had been such a lively scene. He missed the time when he fought side by side with his brothers. Finally, he could see everyone. The few of them cheered as they followed behind Yiqing Luo, preparing to leave. Suddenly, a clear cry came from the sky. They saw a ball of fire rushing toward them at high speed. That figure was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it stopped at the edge of the cliff along with the hurricane. Qi Yan. Everyone in the world group recognized that noble and elegant vermilion bird as they cried out in surprise. Vermilion bird raised its head arrogantly as it threw the man in its claws onto the ground. That was Third Elder? Yiqing Luo's brows rose. She had not expected Qi Yan to capture Third Elder back. Chapter 42-35. It wasn't easy for her to escape, but she was caught back for no apparent reason. The crux was, she was the only one who was caught back. Yiqing Luo could already imagine what had happened earlier. Bai Mei brought Third Elder away wasn't because Third Elder had risked his life to send the Dark Yin flute into her hands. She had totally treated Third Elder as the next Hall Master Wu Yan. In case the Dark Yin flute's power wasn't enough, she could even have Third Elder as food to feed the Dark Yin flute. Moreover, if something were to happen, they could still use the Third Elder as a shield. So, after Qi Yan appeared, without any hesitation, Bai Mei tossed the Third Elder out. Looking at Third Elder, who was rolling on the ground, the Brothers of the World group all rushed up and stomped on him. Before Yiqing Luo came, it was this sanctimonious, benevolent-looking old woman who instigated Hall Master Wu Yan to torture them and humiliate them. Yiqing Luo didn't stop them from venting their anger. She looked at Qi Yan and raised her hand as she was about to caress Qi Yan's head. But it was slapped away by Qi Yan's wings. Even if you contracted this sacred beast's head is not something you can touch. Qi Yan snorted. She could tell that Qi Yan was angry. Yiqing Luo smiled as she took another step closer to Qi Yan. As she got closer, Qi Yan only moved his head but didn't move away. Yiqing Luo coaxed, "Little Qi Yan, don't be angry. I left you in the Linglong Palace, hoping that you can help me to awe those disobedient people in the Linglong Palace. After all, among my war pets, only little Qi Yanyu is the most suitable choice, isn't it?" Before the palace master of the Linglong Palace died, before Dmo Xian appeared, he called out to the entire Linglong Hall to deal with her. At that time she summoned Qi Yan out. The might of the Crimson Flame sacred beast, in addition to its untamed and arrogant nature, completely disregarding everyone else's existence. It successfully suppressed most of the Linglong Hall's disciples. After that, Yiqing Luo didn't specially keep Qi Yan. She had not expected. Qi Yan actually looked for her at this moment. Its angry look was obviously because it was angry at her for forgetting it in the Linglong Palace Hall. He was also angry at her for not bringing her along when there was a need to bully others and show off. He knew his battle pet's personality very well. Yiqing Luo's coaxing made Qi Yan feel much better. However, she still raised her head arrogantly, putting on an arrogant and proud look, as if she didn't care about anyone. Yiqing Luo sighed. He could only coax his little ancestor. The people of the world group trampled and kicked Third Elder until he was on the verge of death before they stopped. After Long Yunzhan consumed the medicinal pill, he rested for a moment and recovered his strength. Yiqing Luo threw the dying Third Elder onto Shengui's back. The Third Elder was in so much pain that he didn't even have the strength to make a sound. His eyes were wide open, silently begging for mercy. Yiqing Luo ignored him. Then he led his men away. He had just taken a few steps. She suddenly stopped in her tracks. The leisurely expression on his face suddenly turned serious. She stopped. Those brothers who were excitedly rushing over to the place where Yiqing Luo was staying in the boundary also stopped in their tracks. Yan Xiaoyi saw Yiqing Luo's ugly expression and realized that something was amiss as she asked softly, "What's the matter?" Chapter 4236. Something's not right? Yan Xiaoyi subconsciously looked towards Qiao Jin beside her and hugged his arm. "What's not right?" Qiao Jin hugged her slender body as his gaze swept the surroundings. He didn't understand what Yiqing Luo meant when she said something was not right. Yiqing Luo didn't answer him directly. Her eyes scanned the surroundings alertly. The expression on her face became more and more grave. In the end, her entire body tensed up. Yes. Something was very wrong. She should have noticed this abnormality from the very beginning. It was only until now that she realized something was wrong. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers curled up tightly. Her long and narrow eyes swept the surroundings sharply. Since she was lured here by Gu Jingyu's The World Group, after so many things had happened, it had been at least 2 hours since the beginning. One must know. When she was in the Qiao residence, no matter how busy Dmo Xian was, he would definitely not leave her for 2 hours. Adding on, Chi went to look for Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian should have discovered that she was missing very soon. But until now, Dmo Xian had yet to rush over. Actually, it wasn't that he didn't rush over, but he couldn't rush over. This cliff looked like an ordinary cliff. In actual fact, it had long set up an inescapable net. No one else could enter. She couldn't walk out. Otherwise. Earlier, when Long Yunzhan transformed into a blue dragon, breaking through the 9 heavens, covering the heaven and earth, how was it possible that it wouldn't attract the attention of others in the earth realm? But it didn't. The commotion here was sensed by Qi Yan, and through their contract, he rushed over. How would Dmo Xian not sense it? So, Dmo Xian didn't rush over. He didn't sense the commotion here. It was entirely because this cliff had been completely sealed. Qing Luo, what's the matter? Seeing Yi Qing Luo's expression turning uglier, Yin Xiaoyi tugged her arm as she asked worriedly. Yi Qing Luo held her hand as she turned her head to look at Yin Xiaoyi, her expression solemn. We've been trapped here. Trapped? Yin Xiaoyi went into a blank. Don't tell me Secluded Palace has other tricks up their sleeves? It doesn't seem like Secluded Palace's way. Yi Qing Luo wasn't sure where this feeling came from. But he could be sure. The power that purposely hid in the dark and sealed everything here was definitely not from the Dark Palace. If it was done by the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, Bai Mei would not have to flee in panic. Qi Yin would not have the chance to bring the third elder back. Because the Darkness Palace would not give her any chance to make a comeback. So, she wasn't the only one who had fallen into a trap. The Dark Nether Palace was probably schemed against too. At this moment, suddenly a gust of cold wind blew across the horizon. When it brushed past the crowd, everyone felt as if they were being targeted by a poisonous snake. The cold, sticky feeling was extremely disgusting. Yi Qing Luo seemed to have understood something as the expression on her face suddenly changed. Swiftly opening up the glowing flame fan, it formed a red protective cover, enveloping the Brothers of the World group within. In the meantime, from all directions, eerie white bones that were stained with blood actually protruded out of the void. They were densely packed in the air. One after another. One after another. The joints were distinct and orderly. Not long later, it was like a densely packed spider web, enveloping everything in the surroundings. This scene made the World group's spines shiver uncontrollably. Their eyes were filled with disbelief as they looked at the scene in front of them. They couldn't help but rub their eyes fiercely. Chapter 4237. What was that thing? How could so many bloody bones appear out of thin air? These bones seemed to have their own consciousness. When he saw the densely packed bloody bones, he felt a chill run down his spine. Yi Qing Luo already knew the other party's identity. Her face sank and she raised her head slightly. Her gaze landed on the bloody bone and she spoke in a low voice. Barbaric Blood Bone King, what do you mean by this? No matter how much she thought about it, she didn't think that the Blood Bone Barbarian King would be the one to stop her here. Previously in the Linglong Palace, the barbaric Blood Bone King knew that the Emperor of the Divine Emperor had passed away. He slumped to the ground. He had even given up on the Linglong Palace, which he had painstakingly built. How could it be at this time? He suddenly appeared again. According to her and Dmo Xian's deductions, the Blood Bone Barbarian King wouldn't appear for a long time. Little girl, we meet again. A middle-aged man's head popped out of the bloody bones that filled the sky. His handsome face was full of smiles. However, that smile made everyone's hair stand on end. Yi Qing Luo raised her head and faced that head, her expression sunk slightly. What do you want to do? The barbaric Blood Bone King did not reply. Instead, he slid that head which was embedded in the blood bone towards Yi Qing Luo along the blood bone, facing the red barrier formed by Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's heart tightened as her fingers which were holding onto the glower flame fan tightened as she stared vigilantly at the barbaric Blood Bone King. Blood-boned barbaric king stopped at a distance away from Yi Qing Luo's eyes and didn't move any further. He curled his lips. Are you afraid of me? At such a close distance, his eyes were not as sharp as when they first met. But it made Yi Qing Luo feel an even heavier pressure. In the Linglong Palace. Because the blood-boned barbaric king wanted to forcefully seize her body, it caused her profound strength to be sealed for a long period of time. If she hadn't formed a contract with Long Yunzhan today and borrowed the power of the contract to break through the blockage caused by the barbaric Blood Bone King in her body, perhaps now, Gu Jingyu or Bai Mei had taken her to the Dark Shadow Palace. As for the Blood Bone Barbarian King, Yi Qing Luo still had some reservations in her heart. After all, he was a paragon god of the god world. They were not on the same level at all. If the barbaric Blood Bone King wanted her life, it was as easy as blowing off dust. Yi Qing Luo did not reply. Barbaric Blood Bone King wasn't angry as he looked at Yi Qing Luo's pair of vigilant eyes as his smile deepened. It's a good thing that you're afraid of this god. If you're not afraid of this god, it's very easy to let this god accidentally play you to death. Then he chuckled. The bloody bones in the surroundings were like indestructible walls, surrounding Yi Qing Luo and the rest, with Yi Qing Luo's protective shield as the perimeter. The blood bones set up one after another blood skeleton frames around the protective shield. From time to time, thick blood would drip down. It looked extremely disgusting and terrifying. The pressure brought by the blood bone made Yiqing Luo feel as if her arm was being pressed by a tall mountain range. It was so heavy that she could hardly breathe. Qing Cheng's complexion turned extremely pale. "Qing Luo, what is that thing?" Lu Xiaoyu frowned as she looked at that strange head, her hair standing on end. "Your complexion doesn't look too good." Yan Xiaoyi stared at that head which was just inches away from her, while staring at Yiqing Luo's complexion. She wanted to help. But she didn't know how to help. The more anxious she was, the more restless her emotions were. She couldn't help but stretched out her hand and pinched Xiao Jin, who was beside her. Chapter 4238. Reminiscing about the past? Would they use this kind of method to reminisce about the past? The other party was obviously doing it on purpose to create pressure to oppress Yiqing Luo. Anyone could tell that. This blood-bone monster with only a head was up to no good. Ha ha. Little brats, what she said is right. You guys, don't be too nervous. This god is merely reminiscing about the past with her. Hearing Yiqing Luo's words, blood-bone barbaric king seemed to be delighted. Using that rough voice, he laughed out loudly. This made the world group's faces turn steely green as they were filled with vigilance. Blood-bone barbaric king. Yiqing Luo's voice interrupted the barbaric blood-bone king's incessant laughter and also attracted the barbaric blood-bone king's gaze from the crowd behind him. "Specially waiting for me here and sealing off everything here? Surely it's not just to talk nonsense with me, right?" Her eyes stared straight at blood-bone barbaric king. That seductive red glow in her eyes was emitting a suffocating energy. When it met the young lady's red eyes, the smile in blood-bone barbaric king's eyes became even deeper. The head which was embedded on the blood bone started to shake agitatedly. "What you said is right. This god only has one motive for coming here." His voice paused slightly. Immediately after, he dragged out his intonation as he enunciated every single word clearly. "This god wants to bring you away." "Bring her away?" Yiqing Luo's brows creased. "You've also collaborated with the Nether Palace?" "What Nether Palace?" "This god wants to bring you away. Do I need other helpers?" "You've belittled this god." Blood-bone barbaric king's tone was extremely arrogant. He could tell. Towards the Nether Palace he was extremely unfamiliar. Not the Nether Palace. Then why did he want to bring her away for no apparent reason? Could it be wanted to snatch her body and head to God Realm? "Young lady, this god is no longer interested in your body." As though he could tell what Yiqing Luo was thinking about, blood-bone barbaric king laughed sinisterly. A head which was hanging on the blood bone revealed a huge smile. Anyone who saw it would feel apprehensive. Yiqing Luo suppressed the discomfort in her heart as she stared at blood-bone barbaric king. "Then what do you want to do?" She couldn't show any bit of panic. She panicked. The brothers behind him would also panic. Barbaric blood-bone king seemed to be able to see through Yiqing Luo's thoughts. His smiling gaze swept past the group of people behind Yiqing Luo. He licked his lips greedily. That look made Yiqing Luo instantly recall the time when she first met blood-bone barbaric king. The palace master of the Ling Long Palace, whose flesh and blood had been directly consumed by the barbaric blood-bone king. He couldn't be treating her brothers as food, right? This thought made the sharpness in Yiqing Luo's eyes froze. The energy in his body shook. The coquettish red glow around his body grew larger. He could vaguely hear a few kacha-kacha sounds. The blood bones and the energy released by Yiqing Luo were squeezing against each other. "Don't waste your time." Barbaric blood-bone king looked at Yiqing Luo with a "you're overestimating yourself" expression, as he gave a smile which didn't look like a smile. "If you obediently leave with this god will naturally let those unimportant people off." His motive was only Yiqing Luo. Besides, he was very picky when it came to food. Not just any random cat or dog, he would swallow it. Just like this bunch of kids in front of him. In his eyes they were still too young. But he could tell that Yiqing Luo cared a lot about these kids. He wanted Yiqing Luo to leave with him. Chapter 4239. As expected, Yiqing Luo's expression instantly sunk. "Blood-bone barbaric king, I've left Xian for an entire 2 hours, he must be looking for me now. Are you sure you can bring me away?" The barbaric blood-bone king raised his eyebrows as if he had heard a joke. "Little girl, aren't you taking your husband too seriously? Why would I be afraid of him?" Although the barbaric blood-bone king's tone was like that, but Yiqing Luo could hear the change in his emotions. This also meant that, in the barbaric blood-bone king's heart, Dmo Xian still had some influence on him. After all, Dmo Xian had directly pointed out his identity. Furthermore, he seemed to know everything that had happened between him and the Divine Emperor. As for him, he was completely unaware of Dmo Xian's identity. Towards Dmo Xian, the barbaric blood-bone king naturally had some restraining fear. Qing Luo, why are you still talking so much rubbish with him? Yan Xiaoyi heard the both of them exchanging words one after another, so how could she not understand what they meant? Her fiery temper flared up in an instant. You keep on saying that you want to bring Qing Luo away, have you ever asked for our opinion? She glared at the blood-bone barbarian king, her face full of anger. If it wasn't for Qiao Jin pulling her from behind, she would have rushed to the protective shield, pointed at the blood-bone barbarian king and scolded it. Even though Qiao Jin was pulling Yan Xiaoyi, but he had no intention of stopping Yan Xiaoyi's words. The faces of the world group's youngsters were filled with rage. How could they not be angry? Ever since they arrived at the Earth Realm, they had been duped by Gu Jingyu, becoming a tool to threaten Yiqing Luo. The Palace of Darkness wanted to make use of them, to make Yiqing Luo listen obediently. But now, another so-called barbarian king of blood bones had arrived, attempting to use them to threaten Yiqing Luo. They tried their best to climb to the Earth boundary. The reason was to come to the Earth Realm and become Yiqing Luo's left and right arm, to be able to become her backing. And not time and time again, causing Yiqing Luo to fall into danger because of them. They had tempers too, okay? Super fierce. It was super fierce, alright? Everyone in the world group bared their teeth in anger. She listened to the brothers behind her, each and every one of them trying to protect her, unwilling to admit defeat. The expression between Yiqing Luo's brows became gentler by several notches. Her pink lips curled into a faint smile. Her voice was gentle, but it could easily suppress their voices. It's fine, he can't take me away. The girl's clear and melodious voice was extremely pleasing to the ear. Like pearls falling onto a plate, it was very pleasant to hear. Qing Luo, we want to be your assistants and not a burden. Lu Xiaoyu raised her head as she looked at Yiqing Luo with a resolute gaze. If that monster wants to bring you away, even if we have to risk our lives, we will absolutely not delay till the Overlord arrives. Yiqing Luo's smile grew softer. He wielded the glowing flame fan and formed a dazzling protective barrier. Along with her mood, it seemed to gradually expand. It was as if it was accumulating some kind of energy. Kacha kacha, the sound of blood and bones breaking continued without end. Yiqing Luo's vision had been looking sideways at the brothers beside her. He did not notice, outside the protective shield, the head embedded in the bloody bones. At this moment, his expression was complicated, and his eyes seemed to be gathering some kind of emotion as he looked at her. That gaze. Passionate. It seemed as though he was looking at another person through her. Barbarian King of Blood Bones looked on and on. The expression on his face suddenly seemed to have been agitated as it became extremely distorted. Chapter 4240. Bang. The barbaric Blood Bone King's face became increasingly distorted. The sound of the Blood Bone and Yiqing Luo's defensive shield clashing against each other was getting more and more intense. Yiqing Luo's body had already started to sway. It was obvious that he couldn't bear the pressure. The brothers of the world group saw this and were anxious in their hearts. He wanted to help, but he was worried that he would affect Yiqing Luo. Barbaric Blood Bone King was obviously taking advantage of the situation to make Yiqing Luo obediently listen to him. The gaze he used to look at Yiqing Luo was filled with infatuation. But that craziness hid some other emotions. He stared at her intently. At the same time, he let out a sinister laugh. It was extremely horrifying. The Blood-Bone Barbarian King deliberately increased his pressure. Yiqing Luo forced her face to turn pale as she clenched her teeth tightly. Her arms felt as if she was carrying a 1,000-pound boulder. It was extremely heavy. He couldn't even stop himself from panting. It was very strenuous. It was extremely strenuous. The two forces collided. Yiqing Luo deeply felt the disparity between herself and the barbaric Blood-Bone Monarch, and the God Realm Supreme. Just like the last time in the Linglong Palace. The Blood-Bone Barbarian King forcibly occupied her body. She, on the other hand, had no ability to resist at all. This kind of feeling was really unpleasant. He was still so far away from becoming a god. When would she be able to catch up with Xian? Yiqing Luo's charming eyes exuded a biting cold. In the depths of his eyes, which were so dark that one couldn't see through them, there were some flames that no one could see through. She clenched her fists tightly. The profound jade heart within his body revolved crazily. It was the energy stored in his body after his advancement. It was slowly extracted by Yiqing Luo. A powerful and majestic force, accompanied by a soaring momentum, lingered in the entire space. But even so, he still couldn't take it, the densely packed bloody bones that covered the sky and covered the earth. Even if the blood-bone barbarian king wasn't in the divine world. Even if the barbaric blood-bone king was imprisoned here for some unknown reason. But his strength was far above Luo. Not to mention the blood flowing on the crisscrossing bloody bones was something that could corrode everything in the world. Boom! He could only hear a violent aura surging around him. With Luo's defensive cover as the center, a shapeless chi wave slowly spread out in all directions. The air shook violently. A terrifying burst of profound ray instantly blasted Luo's defensive shield into pieces. That blood bone with distinct joints and giving off a kacha sound pierced through the defensive barrier. The strangely shaped bone pierced right into the group of people from the world. Fortunately, everyone reacted quickly. He quickly dodged the sharp, blade-like bloody bones. What shocked everyone was, after the protective shield broke, a wave of coldness as if he was in an ice house, directly rushed towards him. The thick smell of blood in the air was nauseating. Everyone's faces instantly turned ashen. All of them quickly raised their hands and covered their mouths and noses. On seeing Luo's grave expression when facing this monster, they guessed that the other party would be a difficult opponent. However, he had never thought that the opponent's strength was actually so strong, so powerful that the confidence that they had picked up with great difficulty collapsed once again. Each and every one of them had an extremely ugly and pale expression on their faces. In this scene, it was exactly what the barbaric Bloodbone King wanted. On seeing that the defensive shield had been shattered. Chapter 42-41. The speed was so fast that no one could react in time. That bloody bone had already appeared beside Luo. Be careful. Yan Xiaoyi's fingers clenched tightly. A huge black sickle blade appeared in her palm. She slashed forward without any hesitation, blocking Luo's front. Bam! The blood bone and the black sickle blade collided. It gave off an earth-shattering profound wave. Yan Xiaoyi was directly sent flying by this powerful force. The black sickle blade in her hand was stabbed into the ground. Xiaoyi. Seeing Yan Xiaoyi being sent flying, Xiao Jin cried out sharply as he speedily moved his body and pounced forward. Stretching out his hand, he caught hold of her firmly and locked her in his arms. Xiao Jin lowered his head and saw the person in his arms with blood oozing out from the corner of her mouth. A sharp golden light flashed past his eyes. He stared furiously at Blood-Bone Barbarian King as he clenched his fists tightly, making a cracking sound. Wangfu family? Suddenly, Blood-Bone Barbarian King's gaze turned towards Xiao Jin as a smile flashed past his eyes. That smile had no profound meaning, but it was filled with a gloomy and cold aura. Xiao Jin frowned. When he was targeted by Blood-Bone Barbarian King, his entire body was filled with an extremely uncomfortable feeling. It was as though, like a prey which had been targeted. Blood-Bone Barbarian King. Xiao Jin didn't understand the meaning of Blood-Bone Barbarian King's smile. How would Luo, who had witnessed how Blood-Bone Barbarian King swallowed the Linglong Palace Lord, know about it? Her footwork moved as she pulled Xiao Jin and Yan Xiaoyi behind her. Her fingers gripped the glower flame fan tightly as she blocked Blood-Bone Barbarian King's gaze towards Xiao Jin. Blood-Bone Barbarian King was a supreme god in the god realm. How could her bunch of brothers be Blood-Bone Barbarian King's opponent? Don't worry, as long as you follow me obediently, I will not touch them. Blood-Bone Barbarian King's head swayed as his eyes shifted onto Luo. Luo's eyes sunk as she pursed her lips tightly and didn't respond. Yan Xiaoyi, who was nestled in Xiao Jin's arms, suddenly tugged Luo's sleeve. Luo, don't think of compromising because of us again. Luo's weakness was that she was too sentimental and righteous. Yan Xiaoyi was afraid that she would act the same way as she did when she was facing Bai Mei. For them, he chose to put himself in danger. At that time, they were hung on the cliff and had no way to stop Luo. Now, they were all standing here, perfectly fine with the ability to fight. How could he possibly watch Luo being taken away by that monster? Luo was just about to open her mouth. Suddenly, the netherworld phoenix ring on his finger felt a burning sensation. Luo's eyes lit up. He looked down at his fingers. The profound phoenix ring flickered with a flickering light. The profound phoenix ring was reacting. This also meant that it was Xian. An uncontrollable smile surfaced on Luo's face. Luo? Yan Xiaoyi, who was shocked by Yiqing Luo's sudden smile, tightened her grip on her arm. She was slightly dazed. "Don't worry, we will be fine." Xian had already rushed over, which meant that Xian had already broken through the enchantment set by Blood-Bone Barbarian King. But Yiqing Luo's words had just ended. She heard Blood-Bone Barbarian King's deafening roar. Immediately following that, an overwhelming profound wave stirred up a monstrous wave. Yiqing Luo's chest instantly felt stuffy as the relaxed expression on her face congealed. The glower flame fan swiftly opened up as a wave of air swept past. Chapter 42. At the instance when the energy was released. Very quickly, another burst of profound wave charged downwards as it collided with her. Blood-Bone Barbaric King's attack was obviously much more ferocious than before. The powerful terrifying aura was totally unblockable. Damn it. Blood-Bone Barbaric King must have sensed that Diamo Xian was rushing over. So at the last minute, it launched a forceful attack. Xianghu. Yiqing Luo gave a shrill cry as she immediately leapt up and somersaulted upwards. Xianghu gave an earth-shattering beast roar. Its front claws slammed onto the ground several times. It splashed the shattered stones all over the ground like a raging storm. At the same time, Yiqing Luo's petite figure landed stably on Qi Yan's back. It turned into a fiery afterimage as it swept past. Xianghui's huge body was like a towering mountain as it enveloped the world group. Qing Luo, Qiao Jin and the others raised their heads as they looked towards the horizon at that fiery afterimage. Once again they were encircled by Yiqing Luo's protection. The sky was already covered by a fiery red glow. Qi Yan's phoenix feathers, which were overflowing with brilliant colors, were sparkling with a cold glint, as though it had been burnt by the raging flames. Sharp, unstoppable. The sharp claws brought along the raging flames which could burn everything in the world as it clawed towards Blood-Bone Barbaric King's head. The young lady's glower flame fan in her hands opened up elegantly. Numerous silver threads were like a fairy scattering flowers as it shot out in all directions as it wound around the intertwining blood bones. Blood-Bone Barbaric King's eyes were bloodshot as he looked at Yiqing Luo and Vermilion Bird's cooperation as he sneered, "Overestimating your own capabilities." Immediately the blood bones shrunk. A few kacha sounds were heard as the blood bones formed a solid shield as it blocked in front of his head. Qi Yan's sharp claws grabbed onto those blood bones. Then the blood bones were all broken. Countless thick blood started to flow out. Qi Yan gave a shrill cry as it spread its wings and flew into the sky. Whereas Yiqing Luo used the silver threads to wrap around the blood bones, and at this instance, it seemed like a bone-shrinking technique. Yiqing Luo's silver threads loosened. That blood bones turned into a sharp blade as it covered the sky and pierced towards Yiqing Luo. Qi Yan. Yiqing Luo lowered her head and looked at the thick blood on Qi Yan's claws. Her face turned green and her voice tightened. The barbaric Blood-Bone King was too sinister. Qi Yan's claws were being corroded by the blood of the Blood-Bone Barbarian King. The cries of the scarlet flame did not stop, and the flapping of its wings was extremely fast. However, his body swayed uncontrollably. In the face of the Blood-Bone Barbarian King's attack, he had no intention of dodging. Bang! A piece of blood bone struck Yiqing Luo's back. The strong force made Yiqing Luo's body tumble down from Qi Yan's back. Scarlet flame was exposed to the sharp blood bones. Clang! Qi Yan let out a cry and spread his wings. But the sky was filled with blood and bones. There was no place for scarlet flame to hide. In an instant, the densely packed bloody bones completely sealed scarlet flame. Crimson flame. The world group's youngsters who were blocked by Xianghui's protective shield all had bloodshot eyes as they howled in rage. Their eyes widened. He looked at the sky in disbelief. It was totally unbelievable. That arrogant and pampered vermilion bird, just like that, was swallowed by the blood bones. Whereas Yiqing Luo, who was struck by the blood bones, flew out. As she looked at the dangerous scene in the sky, her pale face started to break out in cold sweat. So close. So close. Just a moment's time. Chapter 42-43. Fortunately, at the last moment she used all her strength to keep the scarlet flame back into the pet space. She felt the scarlet flame's presence in the pet space. Yiqing Luo's heart then slowly relaxed a little. But following that, a new problem troubled her. Under the violent impact of the blood bone earlier, her 5 viscera and 6 bowels felt as if they had been shattered. In addition, during the thrilling moment, All her mental power was concentrated on summoning the vermilion bird. At this moment Yiqing Luo only felt her chest was stuffy. Her figure swayed and fell straight down. Just at this moment, a tall figure quickly approached. Her waist suddenly tightened. Then he was firmly held down by a thick strength. Yiqing Luo's petite body was brought into a broad embrace. Purple flowing cloud long robe fluttered. Silver silk embroidered robe fluttering. Elegant sandalwood fragrance seeped into the nose, wrapping Yiqing Luo's body and mind. It also washed away Yiqing Luo's cold and austere. After touching that warmth, the young lady's tensed body also softened. "Ah Xian, you're here?" The young lady nestled in the man's arms, her hands circled the man's neck. Looking up, collided with that black as ink eyes. The man's eyes were flustered, anxious, and after seeing her, all kinds of emotions were all displayed in front of Yiqing Luo. Her heart suddenly softened. Not knowing why, a burst of sourness arose in her charming eyes. Her eyes actually turned red. Lil Luo Looking at the young lady's slightly red eyes, Dimo Xian's heart felt as if it was pierced by a needle. He couldn't help but tighten his hands, rubbing her tightly into his arms. From the young lady's body he absorbed her fragrance. His restless heart finally calmed down. All he wanted to do was to hug Yiqing Luo tightly, feeling her warmth by his side. He only wanted to hug Yiqing Luo tightly, feeling her warmth by his side. He couldn't imagine what kind of mood he had when he found out that Yiqing Luo was missing, looking for her. He also couldn't imagine, after completely unable to sense Yiqing Luo's breath, how flustered his heart was. "Ah Xian, sorry. Sorry." Yiqing Luo could feel the man's emitting emotions. She wrapped her arms around the man and pressed her head against his chest. It was her who had made Dimo Xian worried. Dimo Xian hugged her head and bent down to plant a kiss on her forehead. There was a smile on his face. "It's good that you're fine." Fortunately, she returned to his side. The barbaric blood-bone king stared coldly at the two people who were embracing each other. There wasn't the slightest change in his expression because of Dimo Xian's appearance. His gaze was piercingly cold like a knife as it fell onto Yiqing Luo. A disdainful sneer came from his nose. Then the blood-bone surged with dark force. It was like a stormy sea rolling up wave after wave of huge waves. Without any hesitation, he headed towards Yiqing Luo and Dimo Xian's direction. Dimo Xian immediately tightened his grip around Yiqing Luo's waist as his sleeves fluttered. His sleeves were rolling like purple flowing clouds. They vibrated with a vast profound wave and collided with the blood-bone barbaric king's profound wave. After the two collided, the explosive force seemed to be able to destroy the heavens and earth. The entire space began to collapse. On the precipitous cliff, huge rocks started to fall downwards. The ground started to crack, forming large cracks. With Xianghu protecting the world group, Yiqing Luo wasn't worried at all. Chapter 42-44. When the two forces collided with each other, she who was at a close distance could acutely feel the surging airwaves, vaguely a little strange. Before she could think carefully, suddenly, a face with a malicious smile appeared in front of him. The sticky and cold bloody bones touched her body. Yiqing Luo's expression sunk, her hand flipped, attempting to shake off the blood bone. But, when she released her profound energy, Yiqing Luo felt that the blood bone seemed to have a kind of suction force, firmly sucking her arm in. The sticky touch made Yiqing Luo's hair stand. She wanted to struggle. But on that blood bone, a thin layer of blood beads spread, starting from her arm. The smile on his face, which was so close to hers, grew colder and colder. Dimo Xian also realized something was wrong. He swiftly hooked the young lady's waist, chopping off the blood bone covering the young lady's arm. But that thick sticky blood was like a crystal-clear ornament, enveloping Yiqing Luo's entire arm. If Dimo Xian made a move, he would definitely hurt Yiqing Luo. Lil Luo Dimo Xian's pupils contracted as he grabbed the young lady's arm, stretching it out. That blood bone was like showing off, swaying on Yiqing Luo's arm. The thick blood was flowing along with it. Other than the sticky coldness which gave her goosebumps, Yiqing Luo didn't feel anything else. But Dimo Xian's eyes were scarlet red, the surrounding terrifying aura dispersed majestically. Bit by bit it spread to the entire space. His purple robe fluttered along with the strong wind. Yiqing Luo was just about to open her mouth to appease the man's emotions. Her peripheral vision suddenly fell behind Dimo Xian. Her pupils contracted as she cried out in alarm, "Be careful! She was just about to open her glower flame fan, blocking Yiqing Luo's outstretched hand. But her wrist moved. It was a piercing pain. That blood bone seemed to have pierced into her bones, making her unable to muster up any strength at all. It was too late. Yiqing Luo's breathing paused as she quickly grabbed Diamo Xian's body, trying to change direction, blocking in front of him. But the moment Yiqing Luo made a sound, Diamo Xian had already clasped her petite body tightly, pressing her firmly into his embrace. The sharp blood bone pierced straight into Diamo Xian's back. She did not know whether it was the blood on the bone or Diamo Xian's blood that oozed out. In an instant, the luxurious purple robe was covered with a dark shade. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated as she felt the man who was hugging her. His strength slightly pressed against her and her eyes turned red. She wanted to reach out and hug the man. However, his arm, which was stuck to the blood bone, was unable to move freely. He tried to force himself to move. It was a heart-wrenching pain. Shameless barbaric blood bone king. He knew that the two of them valued each other. So he intentionally hurt her to attract Diamo Xian's attention. She had angered Diamo Xian and he had placed all his attention on her. And then take the chance to lay hands on Diamo Xian. Because the barbaric blood bone king was well aware of this. Diamo Xian would reveal his back for her. She looked at the dark marks on the man's back. Yiqing Luo's eyes seemed to be sealed with a layer of frost. She clenched her teeth as though she had made up her mind. She looked down at her own arm, which was stuck to the blood bone, totally unable to move. Her eyes turned sharp. She raised one hand and turned it into a sharp ray, chopping downwards. Lil Luo, what are you doing? This action shocked Diamo Xian as he shouted out sharply, raising his hand to grab Yiqing Luo's raised hand. Chapter 42-45. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly. Her eyes were bloodshot red. She didn't want it to be like this. But the blood-bone barbaric king obviously wanted to use the blood bones to control her. She hadn't forgotten until now how the Linglong Palace Lord was swallowed by these blood bones. She didn't want Diamo Xian to have any misgivings because of this. The man's breathing was getting heavier by the minute. Apparently it was because of the blood bone that had pierced into his body. What was scary was not the blood bone, but the thick blood on the blood bone. The blood that could corrode everything. If it entered a human's body, she didn't know what would happen. Thinking of the time at Linglong Palace when Diamo Xian blocked the blood on the blood bone, his flesh was corroded. Thinking of the red flame, the blood on the blood bone, the corroded sharp claws. Yiqing Luo's heart was in a mess. She suppressed the panic in her heart and called out Diamo Xian's name softly, while feeding the pill into his mouth. But the blood-bone barbaric king obviously didn't give them a chance to breathe. After seeing Diamo Xian was hurt, he laughed sinisterly. Immediately it drove the densely packed blood bones to crazily entangle. The blood-bone barbaric king's target had always been very firm. Yiqing Luo only felt that the blood bone on her arm was like a big mouth, biting her hand tightly. She cried out in pain. Her body was suddenly pulled. The other arm, which was clasped in Diamo Xian's palm, slipped from the man's hand. Diamo Xian's eyes were sharp and he wanted to hold the young lady's hand again. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled and immediately put her hand over to Diamo Xian's stretched out hand. But their fingers just brushed past. The densely packed blood bones were like a woven big net, enveloping the two of them, separating Yiqing Luo and Diamo Xian completely. Immediately following that, Yiqing Luo's body was suddenly pulled. Her back hit the hard blood bone. She was firmly fixed in place. The sticky cold touch spread all over her body. That head, which was embedded in the blood bone, followed the distinct joints of the blood bone and slid in front of Yiqing Luo. Such a close distance. He was so close that he could feel the blood-bone barbarian king's cold aura on his face. The barbaric blood-bone monarch stared straight at her and smiled triumphantly. "Little girl, in the end you won't be able to escape from my grasp." As his words fell, Yiqing Luo's intuition told her that horrifying face, which was just inches away from her, cracked into a treacherous smile. In the next instant her vision turned black. His mind suddenly became blank. Vaguely they seemed to hear Diamo Xian's cold and dignified voice. She could vaguely see a purple figure walking toward her. Blood-bone barbarian king. "You dare to hurt her, even if this lord ascends to the heavens or dives into the earth, I will definitely crush your bones and scatter your ashes." Diamo Xian clutched his chest, his face filled with malevolent rage. The blood-bone barbaric king's eyes swept across the young girl's face, which was as clean as a baby's. Since you know about this god's matters, you should also know. How could this god bear to hurt her? Dmo Xian's face was solemn and cold, a bloodthirsty murderous intent flashed past his eyes, his 5 fingers clenched so tightly that a cracking sound could be heard. The blood-boned barbarian king sneered. The sky was filled with blood bones, like a cicada's pupa, covering Yiqing Luo's delicate body. Immediately after, just like how it came, quietly disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. The black fog which covered the sky gradually dispersed, revealing a bright light. The moment Xiangui's protective shield was released. Chapter 42-46. However, the only thing they could touch was air. As though everything earlier was just an illusion. Everyone's eyes were red as their fists were clenched tightly by the sides, as their chests were filled with resentment and suppression. He watched helplessly as Yiqing Luo was brought away. But they had no way at all. This kind of them. What rights did they have to become Yiqing Luo's backing? Yiqing Luo's backing. Overlord. The world group's young man's voice was hoarse as he placed all his hopes on Dmo Xian. Madame Qing Luo, she will be fine, right? Just as he said that. Then she was pulled by someone forcefully, stopping the young man from asking any further questions. Lu Xiaoyu pulled him back as she suppressed her voice. Don't poke the overlord's heart. Something happened to Qing Luo, he is more anxious and upset than any of us. That's right. In this world, no one loved their Madame Qing Luo more than the overlord. Even if it was themselves, they couldn't be compared to the overlord's affection. No. There was no comparison at all. The world group suppressed the churning anxiety and uneasiness in their hearts as they looked at the man who stood stiffly on the spot, not moving at all. Even though the man didn't say a word. His expression didn't have any change at all. Everyone could feel. From the man's body, a deep magnetic field was emitted, as though it was going to envelop the entire world in darkness. Not knowing how much time had passed, Yiqing Luo slowly opened her eyes in her drowsiness. Perhaps she had been unconscious for too long. The minute she opened her eyes, her head started to feel an intense dizziness. So much that she couldn't help but shut her eyes tightly. Her glabella started to ache faintly. After recuperating for some time, she then felt slightly more comfortable as she tried to open her eyes again. Other than feeling weak and powerless, she didn't feel any other discomfort. Her throat was about to emit smoke as she felt extremely uncomfortable. She raised her hand and was just about to get up. A pair of soft little hands had already held onto both of her hands. Immediately following that was a lady's gentle and respectful voice. Eldest young miss, you're finally awake. When her hands were held by that soft little hand, Yiqing Luo's heart trembled. He actually wasn't able to avoid this person's hand earlier? Yiqing Luo's body stiffened, causing the lady to ask concernedly, Eldest young miss, are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere? This servant will immediately call the doctor. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as she sat up straight with the lady's support. She saw a girl in peach-colored clothes standing by the bed. She looked to be about 18 or 19 years old and was looking at her with concern. He passed by the woman. This was an extremely luxurious room. The furnishings in the room were both noble and elegant. She frowned and stared at the woman. You are? As soon as he opened his mouth, his voice was as hoarse as a sawtooth. She coughed violently several times. The lady hurriedly brought a cup of warm water from the side and sent it to Yiqing Luo's lips while apologizing in a low voice. Eldest young miss, it's my fault for not taking good care of you. The water that entered her mouth was sweet and smooth. In an instant, his dry throat was moisturized and revitalized. The lady carefully supported Yiqing Luo to lean against the head of the bed and with a plop sound, she knelt on the ground and kowtowed fiercely. Eldest young miss, please spare me this time. Yiqing Luo's head ached a little as she was baffled by this scene. Chapter 42-47. The lady carefully raised her eyes and took a look at Yiqing Luo. Seeing that she didn't have any intention to blame, and seeing her tightly knitted brows, she went forward to massage her head. The lady's technique was skillful and skillful. It made Yiqing Luo feel very comfortable. The lady spoke softly, Eldest Miss, servant Gu Yun is the first household's maid who serves Eldest Mississippi. Yiqing Luo had a bad premonition. What is this place? This is Bone Lord's residence. Gu Yun replied warmly. Bone Lord? Yiqing Luo's brows thumped as she suddenly opened her eyes and grabbed the two hands which were pressing on her temples. The Bone Lord you mentioned is Blood Bone Barbaric King? Sure. Gu Yun's eyes widened as she carefully looked to the side. After confirming that there was no one else around, she whispered, In the residence, you must not mention this word. If Bone Lord heard this, even eldest miss might not be able to persuade him. Which meant? The Bone Lord that Gu Yun mentioned was Blood Bone Barbaric King. What on earth was going on? What was the Blood Bone Barbaric King trying to do by bringing her to this residence? Eldest miss, don't panic. I will inform eldest miss about the matters in the Bone residence. As long as eldest miss doesn't touch Bone Lord's bottom line, he will not bear to punish eldest Mississippi, Gu Yun said smilingly. Yiqing Luo? The current situation was a little confusing and she needed time to digest it. Eldest miss must be hungry? I will bring the porridge up immediately. Gu Yun retracted her hand from Yiqing Luo's. She got up and ran to the outer hall to bring the porridge. Yiqing Luo's fingers grabbed. She lowered her eyes and looked at her empty hand. The expression on her face was somewhat grave. What was wrong with her? Not only could Gu Yun easily hold her hand, but she could also hold her hand. She could also easily break free from her hand. Could it be? Yiqing Luo had a vague guess. She closed her eyes slightly and revolved her profound jade heart. Indeed, it was empty. Her body was empty without the slightest fluctuation of energy. She clenched her fist and there was no fluctuation of profound wave in her palm. Her energy had disappeared once again. This time, not only was she unable to activate the divine relic, even his own pet space could not sense it. Moreover, she was unable to sense the existence of Old Man Tsang within the Azure Dew bracelet. It was as if she was just an ordinary person right now. Apart from not being able to use profound strength. Apart from being unable to control the profound energy. She had no discomfort anywhere else. This knowledge made Yiqing Luo's brows creased even tighter. There was no need to guess. This must be the doing of the barbaric Bloodbone King. What exactly does he want to do? Brought her to his territory. He even arranged for a maid to serve him? You're finally awake. Suddenly, a shrill voice came from the quilt. The voice was somewhat familiar, and the tone was also so familiar that it made people want to beat him up. Yiqing Luo lifted the blanket. A little red head popped out from the bedding. That sharp mouth directly poked the back of Yiqing Luo's hand. Why are you so useless? That peck did not hurt at all. Yiqing Luo stared at the red bird about the size of 2 palms in front of her, startled. Qiyan, you're here too? Qiyan rolled his eyes in a bird style. This sacred beast is doing this for you. Yiqing Luo hurriedly carried Qiyan out from the quilt. Her gaze was fixed on its pair of claws. As expected. Chapter 42-48. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted. Her slender fingers gently touched Qiyan's claws. However, even after a long time he still couldn't touch its claws. Because of fear and because of guilt. Hey, ugly woman, what's with that expression? You're already ugly enough, now you look even uglier. Qiyan flapped its wings, its tone was full of disgust. But as it complained, it flapped its wings and straightened its little body, its red eyes looked at her. This sacred beast is not as weak as you want to laugh. This little injury won't kill me. Although the words were not pleasant to hear. But it was obvious that she could feel it. Qiyan didn't want her to worry too much, to feel too guilty. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly, her hand slowly covered Qiyan's body. The fiery phoenix feathers were extremely soft. She asked in a slightly trembling voice, does it hurt? No. Qiyan raised its long neck. Yiqing Luo gently took the little bird into her arms. Her lips were printed on Qiyan's little head. Qiyan was stunned and wanted to struggle. An extremely low and shallow voice floated down from the top of its head, making its body and mind soften. Don't worry. I will definitely avenge you. No one can hurt my companion. No one can. Companion. Qiyan's red eyes were in a trance for a moment. No one had ever treated it as a companion, as a sacred beast. This woman. Although she was a little ugly, a little weak, a little useless. But she was its chosen master. And after all, she had her merits. Eldest miss, the porridge is here, let me serve you some porridge. Outside the door, Gu Yun walked to the bedside with a jade porcelain bowl. When her gaze fell on Qiyan, she smiled. Eldest miss, don't worry, your pet, Bone Lord has already treated it, it will recover in a few days. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Qiyan's claws became like this, wasn't it because of Blood Bone Barbaric King? Blood Bone Barbaric King would treat Qiyan's claws? It was indeed him who treated me. Qiyan's voice was a little dull, obviously embarrassed. It was also very puzzled. Injured by Blood Bone Barbaric King. The Blood Bone Barbarian King had cured him again. Could this be considered as giving a sweet date after a slap in the face? Eldest Miss, Bone Lord still dotes on you. Gu Yun carried a bowl of porridge and came to the bedside. This is the first time this servant has seen Bone Lord attach so much importance to someone. Yi Qing Luo stopped Gu Yun from feeding the spoon to her mouth. I'll do it myself. Be careful, it's hot. Gu Yun did not insist. Yi Qing Luo took the small bowl and looked down at the medicinal porridge in the bowl. The fragrance was rich and extremely appetizing. Faintly, there was also a hint of the smell of medicinal herbs. It could be seen that extremely precious medicinal ingredients were used to boil the fire to a sufficient degree. As she drank, she looked at Gu Yun. Blood bone? She had only spat out 2 words when she was stopped by Gu Yi's gaze. Yi Qing Luo recalled what Gu Yun had said in this place. The barbaric blood king didn't like to hear the 4 words, barbaric blood king. She pursed her lips and continued to ask, where is he? I want to see him. Chapter 42-49. Taking care of her? Hearing this sentence, Yi Qing Luo felt her hair standing on end. From the beginning, Gu Yun had used various phrases like, Bone Lord values you, Bone Lord dotes on you, and so on. Yi Qing Luo was almost suspicious. That so-called Bone Lord and Blood Bone Barbaric King were not the same person. After finishing a bowl of porridge, Yi Qing Luo's stomach finally didn't feel empty anymore. Her strength had also recovered a lot. She passed the bowl back to Gu Yun and lifted the blanket. She looked down at her sweaty clothes. Gu Yun put the bowl to the side and asked with great insight, Miss, do you want to take a bath? I'll go prepare now. Yi Qing Luo nodded. According to Gu Yun, she had been unconscious here for 2 days. Early on at the cliff, she was entangled with Bai Mei and the rest, and then there was Blood Bone Barbaric King. Her body was already sticky. After the bath, she braced herself and went out to see what kind of place this was. Gu Yun first left the room and came back after about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn. Behind her were 4 maids in uniform. Each of them held a tray with the necessities for bathing. Eldest Miss, please follow me. Gu Yun helped Yi Qing Luo put on an outer robe and supported her arm. After walking out of the room, what came into sight was an extremely spacious loft. The trees were lush and verdant. A pond of clear spring was located on a rockery. At first glance, it was elegant and noble without losing its style. Just by looking at it, one would feel comfortable. The person who built this loft had good taste. Following Gu Yun, they turned into another long corridor. Along the way, they didn't see anyone else. When they reached the bathing area, the 4 maids neatly placed the things and left. Only Gu Yun supported Yi Qing Luo to the side of the pool. In the pool, a thin mist curled up in spirals. Above the pool, there were pieces of flower petals floating, and mixed with a light medicine box. When the medicine entered her nose, Yi Qing Luo could tell what medicinal herbs were placed in the pool. They were all medicinal herbs to strengthen the body and recuperate the body. How considerate. Yi Qing Luo rejected Gu Yun's service and let her wait at the door. Stripping off her robe, Yi Qing Luo stepped into the pool. The warm water washed away her fatigue. The faint fragrance of herbs and flowers lingered in the air. She closed her eyes comfortably. On the side of Qi Yan, a head popped out of his clothes. When Xiao Qin saw the young girl's face covered by the mist in the pool, her red phoenix feathers seemed to turn even redder. His little wings could not help but flutter a few times. Qi Yan. In the hot spring, the girl's voice seemed to be covered with a layer of water vapor. Qi Yan's phoenix feathers trembled. This holy beast didn't peek at you. Yi Qing Luo. You're just a bird, so what if you peeked? She turned over, put her hands beside the soup pool, and looked at Qi Yan through the dense mist. I want to ask you what happened after I was in a coma? He woke up. She came to a strange place. Meeting a stranger. She even became the so-called young Mississippi. She didn't understand what the blood-bone barbaric king wanted to do. Qi Yan was silent for a moment and shook his head. I was originally healing my legs in the pet space, but suddenly I was forcibly sucked out of the pet space by a force, and then I saw the blood-bone barbarian king. Chapter 42-50. Yi Qing Luo's expression changed slightly. She understood the meaning of Bloodbone Barbaric King's words. In this unfamiliar place, Bloodbone Barbaric King had used some unknown method to make her lose her profound energy. Even her own divine weapon and anything that needed to be connected were all sealed. Except for Qi Yan. She really had nothing left. Bloodbone Barbaric King would choose Qi Yan. It was probably because Qi Yan's claws had been corroded by his blood. Even though he had treated Qi Yan, In a short period of time, Qian didn't have the ability to fight. Qian replied, "After he treated me, he threw me onto you," and then instructed others. "You are the eldest Missy of this Gu residence." After a pause it added, "What Gu Yun said earlier was not wrong. During the 2 days when you were unconscious, he indeed did not spare any effort to take care of you." Yiqing Luo? Yiqing Luo really couldn't understand this operation. Qian rolled one round on the ground and rolled to the side of the pool. The red phoenix feather hit Yiqing Luo's arm, which was propped up on the pool. The warm water wetted its phoenix feather. It used its sharp beak to peck Yiqing Luo's arm. "That's right, blood-boned barbaric king. May have some thoughts towards you." "Thoughts?" Yiqing Luo's slender fingers pinched its messy mouth. "What do you mean?" Qian shook its head and broke free from Yiqing Luo's hand. "It's you humans. The kind of thoughts a man has towards a woman, the kind of thoughts the Overlord has towards you." Yiqing Luo? Yiqing Luo rubbed her arm. Hashtag forming a CP with a head? Hashtag blood-boned barbaric king only had a head. And that age was right there. What kind of thoughts did a man have towards a woman? Qian rolled his eyes at her. "Who told you that blood-boned barbaric king's appearance only has a head? He has a body?" Yiqing Luo had only seen blood-boned barbaric king twice, and both times it was just a head, with densely packed blood bones. Qian, since he can freely control the blood bones, naturally he can use the blood bones to build a suitable body for himself. Yiqing Luo. "Alright, I've learned something new. This is indeed the world of the big shots." Qian raised his mouth again and poked her. "Although I don't understand the love between you human beings, I have been influenced by you and the Overlord. In the past 2 days, the barbaric blood-bone king has been staring at you in the dead of night when there's no one around. That gaze. Tisk, it's like the gaze of a venerable emperor staring at you." Yiqing Luo was stunned. Suddenly, the scene of him facing off against the blood-bone barbarian king at the edge of the cliff surfaced in his mind. The barbaric blood-bone king looked at her. It was indeed strange. It was as if she was his most prized possession. At that time she didn't think too much about it. Now that he thought about it, it was indeed a little strange. But what Yiqing Luo could confirm was, the blood-bone barbarian king's feelings for her were definitely not what Qian had said, the so-called feelings between a man and a woman. As for what kind of feeling it was, at the moment she had no way of knowing. "I can only wait until I see the blood-bone barbarian king and ask him personally." Qian continued to talk about what happened when Yiqing Luo was in a coma. It was nothing more than the barbaric blood-bone barbarian king indeed attached great importance to her. This made Qian even more suspicious of the barbaric blood-bone barbarian king's feelings towards Yiqing Luo. Just as he was talking about it, Yiqing Luo's hand that was playing with the soup suddenly paused. "Who?" A delicate rebuke came out from her mouth. Chapter 4251. Qian's vision followed Yiqing Luo's gaze. A figure flashed past the door. It fluttered its wings and rushed out of the room. Very quickly, a man's groan was heard from outside. "Man, here. There was actually a man? Didn't she not see anyone along the way?" Yiqing Luo's brows creased slightly as she sensitively sensed the surroundings. She quickly got up from the hot spring. Her arms stretched out and the robe that was hanging on the rack slid into her arms. She quickly put on the robe neatly and walked out of the room. The first thing he saw was Qian flapping his wings and pecking at a man with force. The man hugged his head, dodging left and right as he cried out in pain. It was mixed with a few curses. He even stretched out his hand, trying to catch Qian to vent his anger. Perhaps it was because the pecking was too painful. That man's expression was sinister as his palms surged with a powerful profound wave, striking directly towards Qian. "Qian." Yiqing Luo's pupils tightened as she immediately shouted and stretched out her hand towards Qian. Qian spread its wings and nimbly avoided the man's palm and flew back to Yiqing Luo's body. Yiqing Luo caressed Qian's phoenix feathers and heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that it wasn't injured. The current Qian was probably the same as her. It could only maintain the size of this small pet. Furthermore, his power as a holy beast had been sealed. "Who are you?" Yiqing Luo held Qian in her arms as she stared coldly at the man in front of her. The man had quickly retracted his palm the moment Yiqing Luo spoke and tidied up his appearance. When Yiqing Luo looked at him, he even straightened his back and put on a graceful look as he smiled at Yiqing Luo. "Eldest young miss, Mr. Ren, why are you here?" Suddenly, a hurried footsteps were heard. Gu Yun walked over with a tray in her hands. When she saw that man, the expression on her face turned extremely ugly. She went around to Yiqing Luo with a vigilant look. The man who was addressed as Mr. Ren fixed his gaze on Yiqing Luo as his lips were filled with smiles. "Miss Yun, I heard that this Mr.'s fiancé has returned, so this Mr. naturally wanted to come over and take a look. What kind of person is this Mr.'s mysterious fiancé?" As he spoke, he stroked his chin. "Now that I've met her, I'm very satisfied with this fiancé of mine." Gu Yun's face turned even more ashen. She straightened her back and blocked the man's gaze. Regarding the engagement, Bone Lord did not personally state it. "Young Master Ren, please conduct yourself with dignity. Don't ruin the reputation of my eldest miss." "Ha! Miss Yun, Bone Lord has promised that whoever can rank first on the honor roll will marry eldest young mistress. In the entire old city, who else can it be other than me?" The man's eyes were full of pride and complacency. "Miss will be my fiancé sooner or later, won't you?" Gu Yun was expressionless. "The matter regarding the honor roll is merely a rumor spread by you and has nothing to do with Bone Lord. Moreover, Mr. Rin came uninvited and harassed eldest young mistress. Your behavior is that of a lecher. Bone Lord will not hand eldest young mistress over to you." The man's smile deepened when he heard that, "There's no smoke without fire." If Bone Lord had not mentioned this matter, the outside world would not be so spread. Chapter 42-52. Facing Gu Yun's anger, the man totally disregarded it. His naked gaze stared at Yiqing Luo without any concealment. His eyes were filled with the man's evil smile. Earlier, although he had just neared the bathroom before he could steady his footsteps, he was already discovered by Yiqing Luo. He was enveloped by a hazy mist again. But she couldn't stop his imagination. The young lady's face was devastatingly beautiful. Her fair jade-like skin was as smooth as a newborn baby's and her pink lips were slightly pursed, as though she was seducing him. Thinking back to the scene just now, where the water vapor had blurred everything in a flash, he felt a chill run down his spine. The man's eyes were almost bursting with evil fire. This naked gaze made Yiqing Luo's slender brows crease tightly. "Mr. Ren, don't go overboard." Gu Yun was infuriated by the man's shameless attitude as her face sunk. "If this goes to Bone Lord, it won't end well." The man's expression changed slightly as his gaze also converged. But the gaze he used to look at Yiqing Luo was still that. Wretched. He laughed mischievously. "Miss Yun is such an intelligent person, I'm sure you understand. If this really goes to Bone Lord, eldest young Mrs. reputation." Ahaha. He was laughing as he rubbed his hands. "You." Gu Yun gritted her teeth as she stared at him angrily. "Shameless. To be able to gain the beauty's eyes, what's the harm in being shameless?" The man pretended to be suave as he swept the hair on his forehead and even winked at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo? Huge poison. Ugly rejection. If it wasn't for the fact that her profound energy was sealed for some unknown reason, she would definitely raise her fist to punch him. Her disgusted gaze naturally fell into the man's eyes. The man laughed loudly instead. "I believe eldest young miss is very satisfied with this fiancé of yours. The last person who used such a disgusting gaze to look at me, do you know what happened to him?" Yiqing Luo was expressionless. "Could it be? Eldest young miss kept him under your skirt?" The man's gaze was fiery. Yiqing Luo continued expressionless. "That person's grave grass is already 6 feet tall." "Ah, ha ha ha." The man was stunned for a moment before he realized the meaning behind Yiqing Luo's words as he couldn't help but burst out laughing. "This master is very satisfied with you as my fiancé, very satisfied." Gu Yun's face was cold as she directly raised her hand and blocked in front of Yiqing Luo, about to make a move against the man. The man suddenly turned around and left in another direction. He laughed as he walked. Gu Yun was so angry that she didn't know whether to put her hand down or not. Just like that, the man's figure disappeared from their line of sight. Even though the man had walked far away, his arrogant and excited laughter could still be heard. Gu Yun's expression changed again and again. Finally he put his hand down. She pursed her lips and bowed her head towards Yiqing Luo to ask for forgiveness. "Eldest young miss, I'm sorry. It's this servant who didn't guard the bathroom properly, giving the scoundrel an opportunity to take advantage. It's this servant who didn't protect you properly." "I'm fine." Yiqing Luo's gaze retracted from the direction where the man had left. She was suspicious of Gu Yun in the beginning. But just now, when facing that man, Gu Yun was serious about protecting her heart. If the man hadn't left in time, She was afraid that now Gu Yun would have fought with the man for her. After being disturbed by the man, she didn't have the mood to return to the pool to soak in the bath. She directly beckoned Gu Yun to leave. Chapter 4253. Gu Yun puffed up her cheeks, gritted her teeth and said, "That's the Ren family's second young master, Ren Jiaming, one of the 4 great imperial families. He's an arrogant and despotic hedonistic disciple." 4 great families. Capturing this piece of information, Yi Qing Luo's pupils unconsciously enlarged in shock. Gu Yun thought that she was afraid of the reputation of the 4 great celestial families and hurriedly comforted her. "Don't be afraid, young mistress. If young Master Ren still dares to mess around, Bone Lord will definitely not let him off. Although the Bone Sovereign has not appeared for a very long time, his prestige and his legend are unstoppable." Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes. He was completely dumbfounded. She didn't pay attention to what Gu Yun was saying. In his mind he kept repeating the words, 4 great heavenly clans. 4 great families. 4 great families. Fuck, isn't this the heaven realm? 4 great clans? Xiaojing. Pei Xing's main family, the Huangfu family, was also one of the 4 great families. The 4 great heavenly families that Gu Yun mentioned and the 4 great heavenly families that she knew should have 2 different meanings, right? Yi Qing Luo's expression kept changing, becoming more and more steely green and more gloomy. Gu Yun saw this and panicked. "Missy, you really don't have to be afraid of young Master Ren. Even if he is the second young master of the Ren clan would definitely not dare to offend Bone Lord. The place we are at now is at the heaven realm." Yi Qing Luo interrupted Gu Yun's words, held her arm and asked solemnly. Gu Yun was stunned by Yi Qing Luo's solemn expression as she nodded stiffly, "Yes. Heavenly realm." She was actually in the heaven realm? The barbaric Blood-Bone King actually brought her to the heaven realm. What was he trying to do? What was his motive? What was he planning? Yi Qing Luo swallowed hard and let go of Gu Yun. "I want to see him." That he naturally referred to the barbaric Blood-Bone King. Gu Yun wanted to say something, but on seeing Yi Qing Luo's gloomy and ugly expression, she assumed that she was disgusted by Ren Jiaming earlier and wanted to complain to Bone Lord. She didn't try to dissuade him. After sending him back to his room, she bowed and left. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Gu Yun came back with a strange expression. Yi Qing Luo looked behind her but didn't see the barbaric Blood-Bone King's figure. Her expression darkened even further. Gu Yun deliberated over her words and comforted, "Eldest Miss, Bone Monarch just sent a message back. He has something to do outside and needs to be busy for a few days. He will probably only return when the honor list opens." Yi Qing Luo? He dared to bring her to the heaven realm. Afraid to come out and see her? Yi Qing Luo started to suspect that the barbaric Blood-Bone King was hiding some huge secret in secret. Her face darkened, and the coldness in her eyes grew colder. Gu Yun hurriedly continued, Bone Monarch also ordered. "Everything in the Gu residence will be managed by Eldest Mississippi. In the heaven realm, Eldest Miss doesn't need to fear anyone. You just need to be yourself." As she spoke, Gu Yun took out a domino from her bosom. Complex totems were carved on the dominoes. It was also faintly emitting a cool aura. With just a glance, one could tell that this was no ordinary object. Gu Yun passed the bone token to her. "This is Bone Lord's token. This token can mobilize all the forces in the Bone residence." Yi Qing Luo, the barbaric Blood-Bone King, was really ambitious. He directly handed over the control of the Bone residence to her. Wasn't he afraid that she would directly take over his forces in the heaven realm? Chapter 4254. Fight out. Very good. This is the style of the Blood-Bone Barbarian King. It seemed that Gu Yun's hatred for Ren Jiaming was quite deep. Yi Qing Luo received the bone tile. It felt as if he had touched a block of ice. But very quickly, it was assimilated by the warmth of her fingertips. She held the domino card and looked it up and down. Her long and narrow eyes raised slightly. "What did you mean by the wind cloud list just now? Why did he only come back when the wind cloud list opens?" "Young mistress doesn't know about the excellence list?" Gu Yun's face was full of shock. "This honor list is the most prestigious competition in our heaven realm. It is held once every 3 years. If you want to become famous and be loved and respected by others, then you must participate in this honor list. Only the top 100 will be chosen in every ranking list. As long as you can squeeze into the top 100, you will be in the top 100 of the entire heaven realm. Some people are favored by the heavens. If they lose on the excellence list, they will be abandoned. If someone has been miserable since a young age and is abandoned by others like a pair of worn-out shoes, if one can obtain a place on the honor list, then from now on, his future will be bright. The honor list determines a person's status, fame, and strength in the heaven realm. After Gu Yun explained in detail, she looked at Yiqing Luo in astonishment. Why doesn't eldest young miss know about the wind cloud list? Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and cursed in her heart. Can I say that I was forcibly brought from the earth realm to the heaven realm by your master? I'm completely clueless about anything in the heaven realm, okay? He complained in his heart, but he still put on a serious expression. I'm not interested in the wind cloud list. The surprise on Gu Yun's face was replaced by a smile. Eldest Miss has Bone Lord as her backing. Even if she is not on the wind and cloud list, all the great clans in the heaven domain have to respect Eldest Mississippi. Yiqing Luo expressed that she didn't want the backing of the barbaric Blood Bone King. As for Bone Lord's current whereabouts, this servant does not know. Gu Yun answered Yiqing Luo's second question. Bone Monarch had not returned to the Bone residence for a long period of time, and there are many matters in the outside world waiting for Bone Monarch to settle. So Bone Monarch missed his appointment with eldest young Mississippi. Yiqing Luo's eyelids drooped as she pondered over the deeper meaning behind Gu Yun's words. For a very long time, logically speaking, the Blood Bone Barbaric King had always been sealed in the Earth realm. Where did this heaven realm power come from? If it was a force from 10,000 years ago that had been passed down to the present, it was absolutely impossible for him to have such a reputation in the heaven realm even now, judging from Gu Yun's tone. The four great heavenly clans were all afraid of the existence of the Bone Mansion. This meant that, although the barbaric Blood Bone King's forces in the heaven realm had been established for some time, they were still in the modern era. It seemed like the barbaric Blood Bone Monarch was hiding a lot of secrets. When will the rankings start? Yiqing Luo raised her brows and asked. Gu Yun, 1 more month. 1 month. In other words, the barbaric Blood Bone King would not return within a month? Did he really trust her to manage his power for a month? He wasn't afraid when he came back. All the forces have rebelled? Or, the forces were all destroyed by her? Where is the main entrance? Yiqing Luo asked again. Gu Yun pointed in a direction. Yiqing Luo tossed the bone tablet into the sky and caught it tightly, stuffing it into her sleeves. Let's go. She strode towards the main entrance. Gu Yun hurriedly followed. Eldest Miss, where are you going? Chapter 4255. The two figures gradually distanced as they walked out of the Gu residence. Two figures silently appeared at the place where Yiqing Luo and Gu Yun were standing earlier. One was tall and straight like a mountain. The other was petite and slender. The lady's slightly dissatisfied voice rang. Gu Yi, why must Bone Lord pamper such a lady? Other than having a face which is still passable, which part of her is worthy of Bone Lord? Don't talk nonsense. The man who was addressed as Gu Yi berated sternly with a solemn expression. Bone Lord naturally has his own reasons for choosing her, and it's not up to us to make irresponsible remarks. I'm just feeling unhappy. The lady's eyes turned red from the berating as her voice turned softer. We can obviously follow Bone Lord to do things, but it's Bone Lord who arranged to protect such a weak lady. Enough. Gu Yi's face turned cold. We only need to obey Bone Lord's orders. Saying that, his figure swayed as he disappeared into thin air. The lady pouted her lips as she snorted indignantly. Aren't you feeling indignant as well? Why are you showing me that face? Ridicule was just ridicule. She was still very quick as she caught up to the man's figure. And all these, Yiqing Luo, who had already left the Gu residence, had totally not noticed it. Her attention was attracted by the prosperous scene in front of her. This heaven realm was indeed the upper realm's middle-level realm. The passers-by, no matter if it was the street vendors or the passers-by, all of them were cultivators with dense, profound energy. These cultivators could be randomly picked out and placed in Nirvana realm. They were all legends who were worshipped like gods. Gu Yun followed behind her, not leaving her by even an inch. And the passers-by, when they saw Gu Yun, all of them respectfully took a detour. Whereas for Yiqing Luo, who was able to make Gu Yun wait on her, naturally became the topic of discussion. I heard that Lord Bone Lord brought his niece back to the Gu residence. That young lady is Lord Bone Lord's niece? In the entire old city, who else can make Miss Yun take care of them so carefully? Previously, when I heard the news of Lord Bone Lord's niece, I thought it was fake, but I didn't expect Lord Bone Lord really has a niece. The passers-by were all discussing. All sorts of discussions went past Yiqing Luo's mind. Then her face darkened. He stopped and turned his head to look at Gu Yun. He asked with a dark expression, "Niece? When did she become the niece of the barbaric Bloodbone King?" She was still wondering why Gu Yun and Ren Jiaming kept calling her Missy. The Bloodbone Barbarian King had announced that she was his niece? Eldest Miss had lost her parents at a young age, and it was Bone Lord who had placed Eldest Miss in the dark to take care of her till now. Rather than saying he's a niece, this servant feels that Bone Lord is more like Eldest Miss' father. Gu Yun didn't hear the uneasiness in Yiqing Luo's words, but instead explained with a smile. "A father? Father, my ass." The Bloodbone Barbarian King really knew how to make up her identity. He had created such a persona for her. However, after hearing what Gu Yun said, Yiqing Luo was more or less able to accept the persona of niece. At the very least, it was better than the father and daughter persona. She had to call the Bloodbone Barbarian King daddy? "Sorry, I can't do it." Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and forced herself to accept the niece persona. In any case, this persona allowed her, who had lost her profound strength, to still be able to use her connections to intimidate others in the heaven realm. Chapter 4256. Under all the attention. Yiqing Luo could only pretend not to see it. Many of the cultivators were not only curious about her identity. On top of that, she had a breathtakingly beautiful face and a unique temperament. Along the way, there were at least 100 over cultivators following behind Yiqing Luo's butt. Some were in admiration. Some were in discussion. But it was probably because of Gu Yun's presence. No matter how curious they weren't within 5 steps away from Yiqing Luo. But the current tranquility didn't represent true tranquility. Based on Yiqing Luo's vivacious physique, how could she possibly have tranquility? As expected, just when the surroundings were in a state of chaos, a shrill and resentful little voice was heard. "Get out of the way, this princess would like to see who this niece of Bone Lord who suddenly appeared out of nowhere is." When the cultivators heard this voice, they subconsciously moved their bodies aside. The expressions on their faces were very strange. When Gu Yun heard this voice, she couldn't help but muttered softly, "Oh no." Her footsteps also speedily turned in front of Yiqing Luo, blocking her figure. Yiqing Luo raised her eyelids and her gaze fell onto this obviously slender but resolutely blocked in front of her back figure. The strange emotions between her brows softened. Very quickly the crowd dispersed to the 2 sides, revealing a path. A 15 or 16-year-old lady walked over with elegant and confident steps. Her chin was raised high, like a high and mighty empress, looking down on all living beings. The lady was dressed in a luxurious dress with a bouquet of flowers. There were several layers of skirt from the inside to the outside, making her every step look like a lotus. Until the lady stopped in front of Yiqing Luo. The distance between the two of them was just 2 steps apart. The lady gave an exquisite low laugh. Her expression was slightly sinister and distorted. That pair of arrogant beautiful eyes sized up Yiqing Luo from head to toe. Just one look. The lady's eyes overflowed with jealousy. But very quickly she laughed coldly. "You are the niece that Bone Lord mentioned?" That tone was full of disdain. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly but didn't reply her. The woman was silent for a long time, but she did not get a response. Her expression immediately stiffened. Bone Lord's niece only has this much capability? This little ability, that little ability? Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she replied in a good mood. The woman clenched her fists tightly, and her knuckles creaked. "You're courting death," she rebuked angrily as her face revealed a ferocious expression. With a backhand she struck out a palm directly towards Yiqing Luo's skull. Although Yiqing Luo had lost her profound energy, but his body retained the habit of fighting and his own senses. In the instant that the woman raised her palm, Lin Fan's eyes widened. Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the dense profound energy that was released from the lady's body. But she couldn't dodge. The profound practitioners who were watching the show in the surroundings watched with folded arms and only cared about watching the show. Or perhaps, he did not think that Bone Lord's niece was not a profound practitioner. All of them had the intention to probe Yiqing Luo. Moreover, in the heaven realm, it was extremely common for people to fight in public. Especially when it was nearing the critical juncture of the chart. Various powerhouses, large clans, large sects, etc., had all sent out their most outstanding geniuses. It could be said, the entire old city, at least 80% of the geniuses were gathered. Any disagreement and they would start fighting. Any disagreement and they would start fighting. Chapter 4257. Swish. In the air, the sound of the profound wave flowing was like a surging wave in Yiqing Luo's ears. She could obviously sense the energy coming towards her. Her body wanted to avoid it. But her body's reaction couldn't keep up with her own feelings. Because there was no fluctuation of profound energy in her body. How could ordinary people avoid profound cultivators' attack? Her thoughts were whirling. The incoming palm wind was like a hot knife through butter, rushing over with the speed of lightning. Bam! In the air there was an explosion of vibrations. The slender figure in front of him easily grabbed the arm of the person who was approaching. 5 slender fingers, but it had an irresistible pressure. It was Gu Yun. She just used one hand to block the lady's attack. Effortlessly and effortlessly. Gu Yun, how dare you? The lady stared at Gu Yun angrily as though she couldn't wait to skin her alive. Gu Yun didn't move at all as she tightened her grip on the lady's wrist. This servant is under orders to protect eldest young miss. No one is allowed to hurt a single strand of eldest young miss's hair. Since she's Bone Lord's niece, then she should bring out her ability and prove her ability in front of everyone, so that everyone will be convinced, isn't it? The lady was filled with righteous indignation. In addition, she was treated like this by a maid in front of so many people. She had lost her dignity as a member of the royal family. Her face turned red and she angrily rebuked, "You offended me like this, are you trying to offend me?" Gu Yun remained unmoved as though she wasn't threatened by her at all. Princess's words are different. Eldest young miss is Bone Lord's niece and also someone whom Bone Lord has acknowledged. Even if she doesn't have the ability, she's still Bone Lord's niece. No one is allowed to bully and humiliate her. Her words paused slightly as her gaze turned cold as she stared at the lady in front of her, saying word by word, including, "Princess." The lady's expression instantly turned steely green as her eyes were filled with a venomous glint. She struggled, trying to break free from Gu Yun's hand. But she was held tightly by Gu Yun, totally unable to break free. She was flustered as she scolded, "Gu Yun, don't get carried away just because you're the maidservant in charge of the Gu residence. No matter how high your status is, you're after all a servant." The lady's words made Gu Yun's expression change slightly. But it was only for a moment. "Princess Xianxia, you don't have to worry about me. This servant will naturally report today's matter to Bone Monarch and personally apologize to him." Gu Yun's face was expressionless as she spoke in a cold voice. The lady was infuriated, but she was unable to struggle free from Gu Yun, so she could only use her eyes to stare fiercely at Yiqing Luo. "As Bone Lord's niece, you're such a waste. What a disgrace to the Bone residence." Yiqing Luo, who was standing behind Gu Yun, raised her brows slightly. Her long and narrow eyes were half closed, looking extremely lazy. This only served to further accentuate her alluring beauty. Towards the lady's indignant words, Yiqing Luo didn't bother much about it. Her focus was on Gu Yun. Just now, the woman who called herself this princess made her move. Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the majestic and powerful profound wave energy. Even if she hadn't lost her profound strength, it would be difficult for them to even put up a fight. However, Gu Yun easily subdued him. Moreover, he didn't give his opponent any chance to retaliate. This Gu Yun has unfathomable strength and is very mysterious. Such a powerful person was actually just a maidservant in the Gu residence? And she even tried her best to take care of her and was extremely respectful. Yiqing Luo suddenly felt. Was it really good for her to waste a big shot like this? Chapter 4258. The clamor and the atmosphere immediately attracted the attention of many people in the surroundings. Someone saw an exclusive scarlet blood BMW outside the crowd. "Aya, it's actually Princess Xianxia." Who provoked Princess Xianxia? So daring, does she not want her life anymore? "I heard that it seems to be the niece that Lord Bone Lord brought back." Lord Bone Lord's niece? How did these two people get into a fight? Tisk. Princess Xianxia had always been the most respected lady in the old city. Now that Lord Bone Lord's niece entered the city and replaced her position, how could Princess Xianxia not be angry? This is the era of competing for background. Princess Xianxia's background is not as good as Lord Bone Lord's niece, so naturally she can only give up her position. The surrounding profound practitioners, on the other hand, were discussing happily. That Lord Bone Lord's niece seems to be a waste without any profound energy. Earlier when Princess Xianxia made her move, It was Miss Yun from the Gu residence who helped her to block it. Waste? It can't be? How could a waste come to the heaven realm? Lord Bone Lord is so powerful, how could the lady that he personally brought back be a waste? Instantly the public opinion took a turn. On the basis of the 3 outer layers, another 3 layers were added. All of them wanted to see what was the disparity between the most respected number 1 lady in the old city and the newly appointed number 1 lady. Yiqing Luo more or less heard the surrounding people's discussions, and more or less understood the reason why the lady in front of her suddenly went up to find fault. It was merely because she was used to being arrogant and couldn't accept a lady who appeared out of nowhere and snatched away the glory that belonged to her. No matter if it was the lower realm or the heaven realm. Power and status were what the cultivators pursued and yearned for. Eldest Miss, I'm sorry, I'll settle Princess Xianxia immediately and won't disturb your mood. Gu Yun held Princess Xianxia as she spoke to Yiqing Luo warmly. Settle. These 2 words were a little insulting to this high and mighty princess. As expected, after hearing Gu Yun's words, Princess Xianxia was so angry that her face flushed red, green and white. Gu Yun, if you dare to offend your superior, I will immediately get someone to kill you. Gu Yun's face was expressionless, showing no signs of fear. A cold light flashed across Princess Xianxia's eyes. She glanced at the crowd and was about to speak when she heard a clear and sweet voice. Gu Yun let her go. It was the niece of the Bone Lord. Princess Xianxia's pupils contracted as she stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Gu Yun was slightly stunned as she looked at Yiqing Luo in puzzlement. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a sweet smile. In this place where the strong are respected, if you don't have the ability, you will indeed be doubted by others. Especially for Princess Xianxia's side, she's a heaven's pride, a powerful person. As she spoke, she deliberately emphasized the word powerful. His gaze swept over her arm, which was clamped by Gu Yun, in a mocking manner. His tone was filled with obvious mockery. But Princess Xianxia apparently didn't hear Yiqing Luo's implied meaning. Hearing Yiqing Luo praising him, his face immediately revealed a complacent expression. Of course. Ever since I was young, I was known as the genius child of the old city. I've devoted myself to cultivation and spent so much effort to get to where I am today. The people around them couldn't help but burst into laughter. Genius child? Devoted herself to cultivation. Chapter 4259. It was simply too embarrassing. But after the laughter, everyone turned their faces away and pretended to be serious, not letting Princess Xianxia find out. After all, the other party was Princess Xianxia. They still wanted to live on. Between the 2 of them, no one could be offended. Just let them be quiet and expressionless onlookers. Towards the sudden laughter of the crowd, the sudden seriousness. Princess Xianxia indeed didn't notice the deep meaning behind it, as all her thoughts were placed on Yiqing Luo. Eldest Miss. Gu Yun revealed a difficult expression as she glanced at Princess Xianxia hesitantly. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she smiled at her. No matter. Gu Yun pursed her lips and finally listened to Yiqing Luo's command as she let go of Princess Xianxia and turned around to return to Yiqing Luo's side. At the same time, Princess Xianxia's eyes turned cold as a sinister gaze flashed past. The moment Gu Yun let go of her and turned around, boundless profound rays gathered on both palms as it struck down towards Gu Yun's back. Be careful. The moment Princess Xianxia made her move, Yiqing Luo noticed her actions. Subconsciously, she grabbed Gu Yun with one hand and pulled her over. The other hand drew out a dazzling red ray. Clang! The sound of the palms colliding resounded. Gu Yun's reaction was swift as she quickly grabbed Yiqing Luo tightly and brought her out of the range of the profound wave. When she turned back, a rare look of astonishment surfaced on her face, only to see the place where she was standing earlier. The profound wave's rays continued to expand as it spread in all directions. But it was stopped in midair as it was unable to attack towards their direction no matter what. Taking a closer look, Gu Yun saw, in that profound wave, a feather fan which was like a raging flame went against that profound wave. It actually forced that profound wave to retreat. Feather fan? What was that? It seemed that it was thrown out from Eldest Miss's hands. Just at this moment, the profound wave was forced to retreat. That feather fan also fell from midair. Glower flame fan. Yiqing Luo opened her palm towards the glower flame fan, but she who had no profound energy was unable to use it freely. A dong sound was heard. The glower flame fan fell onto the ground. The red glow flickered for a moment before disappearing. There was a strange silence all around. Everyone stared at the red feather fan on the ground in astonishment. Other than the fact that it was made of precious materials, it was just an ordinary item. However, this ordinary object had actually blocked Princess Xiaoju's all-out attack just now. Were they seeing things? Princess Xiaoju was also shocked. Glaring at the red feather fan on the ground, he felt as if he was going to spit fire. When Gu Yun moved, she headed towards the devouring flame fan. Princess Xiaoju suddenly reacted and shouted sternly, "Snatch the fan back for me." As soon as Princess Xiaoju finished speaking, outside the crowd, 5 men in tight clothes suddenly flew out and quickly rushed toward Gu Yun. The 3 of them stopped Gu Yun. The 2 of them quickly approached the glowing flame fan. Gu Yun's eyes turned cold. Profound ripples surged as she slammed her palm towards the person who was blocking her. She could tell. The eldest miss attached great importance to the feather fan. Just now, the eldest miss had thrown out that feather fan in order to save her. She would never allow Princess Xiaoju to snatch eldest miss's feather fan. Thinking of this, Gu Yun's expression turned even colder as her 5 fingers clenched tightly. The profound rays suddenly shook. And those 2 men had already rushed to the side of the glowing flame fan. They stretched out their hands in that glowing flame fan. Ah! Chapter 4260. A fiery red shadow like a fireball. Just as that man withdrew his hand, the glower flame fan on the ground had already disappeared. The men quickly looked towards the direction of the red shadow. They saw a little bird, fluttering its wings, hanging in its mouth, was that red feather fan. So, that man shrieked miserably and withdrew his hand. Was he pecked by this bird? Damn bird. The well-dressed men quickly flew towards the bird. When that red shadow appeared, Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly tightened. Was Qiyan. When did it fly over to the glower flame fan? Yiqing Luo quickly stepped forward and took Qiyan into her arms. Qiyan placed the glower flame fan in Yiqing Luo's hands and snorted coldly, "In the end, I still have to do it. You're really useless." Yiqing Luo rubbed its fluffy phoenix feathers and whispered, "Next time don't act on your own. What if you get injured?" "I will get injured? What a joke. A human who can injure me has not been born in this world." Qiyan proudly raised its little head. Yiqing Luo pinched its injured paw. "Wait till you've recovered, then say this again." "Qiyan, this is your war pet?" Princess Xiaoju's sharp voice was heard. Yiqing Luo hugged Qiyan tightly and raised her eyes vigilantly. But she saw the surrounding people, looking at her with extremely astonished and horrified eyes. No, to be more precise, they were staring at Qiyan in her arms. Especially Princess Xiaoju's eyes, it was even more fiery. "Eldest young miss." Gu Yun seemed to have realized something as she forced the 3 men in front of her to retreat and speedily returned to Yiqing Luo's side as she grabbed her arm. "Oh no! I forgot to remind eldest young miss, you must never let anyone know that eldest young miss pet can speak human language. I will escort eldest young miss back to the Gu residence now." Yiqing Luo understood. These people were shocked that Qiyan could talk to her? When they were in Nirvana realm. A war pet that could speak human language was indeed eye-catching. In this heaven realm, there were very few war pets that could speak human language. Gu Yun had the intention to bring Yiqing Luo away. But Princess Xiaoju's vision was already glued to Qiyan. "Want to leave?" Her lips curled upwards as her figure speedily closed in on Yiqing Luo. Compared to the feather fan, she was more interested in the battle pet that could talk. Gu Yun swiftly protected Yiqing Luo and retaliated with a palm strike. Both sides took a few steps back. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand and placed it on Gu Yun's shoulder. She curled her lips, patted Gu Yun's shoulder lightly and shook her head slightly. Gu Yun's pupils shook. She looked in the direction of Princess Xiaoju. "Eldest miss, this servant is worried. Since Bone Monarch has already announced my identity, he will naturally not watch as I am bullied. Bullying me is equivalent to insulting the Bone residents." Yiqing Luo explained softly, "Since she's feeling indignant, then let her give up." "Give up? In the heaven realm, if you want to make someone give up or kill the man. Otherwise, he would be above that person, leaving no room for that person to turn the tables." But how could eldest miss do these 2 things? Gu Yun had been serving Yiqing Luo and naturally knew that Yiqing Luo had no profound energy. This was a place where strength reigned supreme. How could Yiqing Luo, who had no profound energy, suppress Princess Xiaoju? Yiqing Luo smiled till her eyes were curved. "Believe me." The young lady was obviously smiling, and her tone was extremely gentle. But Gu Yun inexplicably felt, a chill down her spine. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.